Hi. Okay, so I've been reading this book. It's called Abhorsen by Garth Nix, and I really, really like it. Um, it's just very interesting, and it's a series. Actually, this is the third one, so it's the last one. The first one was called Sabriel, then Lirel, and then now we have Abhorsen, and it's really, really interesting. I'll probably do some other videos reviewing or just sort of the sort of world building. So if you're into world building, this book is definitely worth a read. I think Nix does an awesome job of just portraying the characters and setting unique qualities and talents to each one of them, and sort of talking about teamwork and how they sort of break together. So I really like that in this book, because it's not like, especially often we see a lot of the characters in books sort of being good at everything, but in this one, every character, even if they're not the protagonist, has their own superpower, and it's very complex, and it's very nice how all the characters fit and work together. And so then we have this girl in this book. We have this girl called Lirael. She's a young woman in her 20s, and she wants to be part of the Clare. And the Clare are sort of like this womanly archetype. So the Clares see the future. They're very intellectual. They plan a lot of things. So I really like that from this book. It portrays femininity and a worldview of femininity very well, even though the guy is a man. Well, I don't know if that has to do anything with it. So we have the Clare, which are like the very feminine part of the world, and they see the future, they plan, they're very intellectual. Then we have the Abhorsen, and the Abhorsen are a family or descendants and from a particular family, and they can go into the future. I mean, they go into death, and into death. I really love the portrayal of death in this book, and I think we'll talk about it later. But then they go into depth, and what the Abhorsens do once they're in death is they can talk to people and things like that, and they can be both men and women in this book. And then we have I still haven't gotten to that part, but this has both the Abhorsen and the Clare were in Lirael also, which is the predecessor to this one. I haven't read Sabriel yet, so I'll tell you about it. But in the Abhorsen, they introduce the makers, and I don't know the wall makers. I don't know if they're the counterpart to the Clare, like the male counterpart, but they fix things. And so one of the passages I really liked in this book, it was this one. It says, Sam and Lirel and Mogay and the dog, which is just called the Disreputable Dog, are sort of our team that we're cheering for. And Sam is Lirel's nephew, although they're like around the same age. And they just lost a cat. So Mogay died in one of their adventures. And and Sam was carrying Mogay in his pack. And that means that he didn't know, and Mogay died. And so Lira says, sees Sam, like they're in the middle of the forest trying to find like the bad guys, and Lira sees Sam looking at the pack and just like, looking at it, and she feels bad for him. She's very like, oh, don't feel bad about Mogay, we got out alive. Let's just give thanks for that. Let's be thankful that we're alive. And he was like, oh, I wasn't thinking about Mogay, I was thinking about how to fix this. And then Lirel just laughs. And I thought this was like a very characteristic of the Abhorsen trait, and very characteristics of the wall makers, because the wall makers make the wall to protect the kingdom. And he's trying to fix things and make things. And I love that from Sam. And then Lirel, just sort of this naturally womanly trait of, taking care of others' feelings and making sure he's feeling okay, and sort of holding the team together and for a particular, like having a goal in mind. And I really enjoyed that. I think it portrayed, and I think that's what literature is supposed to do. It shows sort of how it's an example of how we can navigate, how we can use literature and learn how to navigate the world. Normally, there's people who are more introspective, and normally it's like women are more sensitive and men are less sensitive, but I don't necessarily think it's it's very safe to think of the world that way, because you can have women that are more like Sam, right? But I think it's important to know that sometimes people are worried about fixing things, or are worried about what's at their hands right there. And some people can be worried about the bigger picture. I know for me personally, I've always been very worried. I mean, just like a very hands-on person. So I'm always thinking about what's like in the moment. And I sometimes can be very, not rude, but just like not that nice, like not taking into consideration other people's feelings, not like in a bad way, but sometimes like not getting what the big picture is. And that can cause a lot of trouble. So I really like the way Nix portrays this relationship between Lirel and Sam, and how that can be useful in like the world, and how, and once again, like the gender roles, they're very displayed, but not like in your face. And I just really like how Sam and manliness, which I think is sometimes that we need, like a way, like not the only way, but a good way to portray manliness is to desire, to protect, to fix, right? And to make, like to work with your hands, and have all this energy and like this big build and this physique. And I think that's a portrayal of manhood that we don't see that often in literature, and that we should see more often. And I think it's very fun, like it's very fun and it's very productive, and I love that character, or like that characteristic from Sam. And so these are just some thoughts while I was reading this book tonight before going to bed. And so yeah, I'll definitely tell you. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about, the portrayal of death. I think death is something very, very real, at the same time very mysterious. I think it really captures, yeah, like I've never seen a book that captures death in such a realistic manner without making it trivial. And the authors and the protagonist's power, or main power, is her ability to go into death. And I think that is so, like, that's such a cool, like, foundation for storytelling, or for in general, like that her power is to go into death and not see the future. Like she wants to see the future, like that's who she wants to be, but she's giving the power to look into death, and with that she's given the power to look into the past, which I thought was very interesting. Like sometimes we're like obsessed with what's going to be happening, but like looking in the past can be just as interesting. Like I know that we don't really think of it as a power, but I thought it was pretty cool that she did, and that the portrayal of this. So I thought that I was really into that. And then also, like, there's the first gate, and then there's the second gate, and there's a river, and it's dark. Like when she goes into death, she describes these things, and I thought that sounds like a lot of cultures and a lot of traditions talk about death, and this one sort of fits into different cultures' perception of death. So I thought it was a more realistic way of treating how we perceive death through different cultures and different traditions than the modern approach of like you're dead and there's nothing more after you're dead, and it's sort of like you're out of the game or you're out of the story once you're dead. And in this case, death is like moving away, like moving to another dimension. And I think that's what really death is about. And I just thought it's brilliant and really, really fun to dive into this book, to look into that. It's also very action packed, which is, it's fine. I think that sort of Lirel and Lirel and Abhorsen are the two last books, but they sort of feel like one big book. And yeah, so very cool, very cool. I really, really recommend it. And what else? Yeah, I think that's basically it. I think that yeah, I don't know what I was gonna say. Oh, and the way I found this book was I was at a friend's house, and he loves to read. He has a bunch of books in his house, and I had just finished mine, which was called Normal People. That's another time to talk about it. I'll talk enough about Normal People also. But yeah, so I just picked it because it sounded interesting. Like I know like the letters caught my attention where it said Lirel, and I was like, oh, that seems like such a cool name, like Lirel. And I was like, oh, and I'm also writing a book now, and it was about Like, I don't really know what it was about, but like, I just sort of like writing like very briefly, and it was about this girl that finds a group of women, a woman community, and they teach her sort of like, they teach her to write and about science and about math, like they teach her. And then she one day she discovers that they do magic, and so she's very like interested like in that. And so that's something like, so when I read Lirel, I was like, oh my god, this is like the Claire. I was like thinking about it because I think that it's so many books, we don't see a space. Like, there's a lot of literature and a lot of books that deal with just men, especially men in war, which I think is really cool. I mean, not really cool. I mean, I love like Star Wars and things like that, like a lot of orders. Well, I mean, Star Wars now, there are girls, but like in the past when it was originally created, there were only men. And that's like, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that you can have orders just with men. And so I was like, but no one writes about like a women's order. Like, what would a woman order look like? Like, it wouldn't be about war. It wouldn't be about, it would be about studying and reading. And so that's what sort of was writing about. But then I saw Lirel, and I was like God sent, because they talked about women and how they had this big library, and then Lirel has her adventures like in the library. And I thought that was such a cool idea. Like, the book in itself, I think it lacks some elements of storytelling. Like, the story's not very cohesive, but just the ideas, the world building is fantastic. Like, she grows up and she becomes into womanhood through reading and discovering her past and different creatures. And it's like, she also makes like different skins so she can transform into different animals. And that's just, for me, that's so amazing, that the storytelling and the ability of what she can do. And you can tell how she progresses into making different like skins to wear and sort of travel around. So I thought like, I'm just getting off track, but that's how it just caught my attention, and it's been fun reading it. And I really recommend that you guys, if you love reading fantasy, this is one. Like, it's been along for a long time, like 2003. And I remember thinking when I was like little, like when I was like in like not first grade, but when I was like in elementary school, because I was like a very avid reader. So I was like 11 and was like devouring the Harry Potter series and just reading a bunch of books and being like, why aren't there like girls in fantasy novels? Because like, the Babysitter's Club or Ramona or all these books had girls, but they were like very realistic fiction, and I didn't like realistic fiction. Like, I really didn't. And no, I mean, I like realistic fiction, but my passion really is fantasy or magical realism, which is a very South America, like Latin American genre. But I love magic realism, but like realistic fiction, is like around there. But I really love fantasy and so, or fiction just plainly. And like, I just couldn't find a lot of books. And I'm sure I like combed my school library, and I'm thinking, okay, these books were published in 2003, right? And it featured a girl superhero, not girl, but like a girl protagonist in a fiction novel. And I just didn't have my hands on it when I was a kid. Like, it's weird. And I found it like so much later. But anyway, it was just, that's just me. And, so, so dark. Anyway, yeah, so if you want to read this book, perfect, lovely. And yeah, I hope that if you see this, you have a wonderful day. Keep your spirits up. Bye.